And this is a Fox News alert. There is a mass shooting out of Florida. Reportedly, the shooting happening just moments ago during the Madden 19 tournament, which is a video game tournament. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is saying that one suspect is dead on the scene, and they're still urging people to stay away from the area, which is the downtown area in Jacksonville, Florida. The Sheriff's Department tweeting this, that the area is not safe at this time, again, to stay away. Now, the number of casualties is unclear at this time, and it is unknown if there is a second suspect or more suspects. One suspect is dead on scene. We have a map of the area there. If you're near a TV set, you can kind of get an idea of where this is happening. Right now, we want to bring in
this happened actually at the GLHF Game Bar that's in the Chicago Pizza shop downtown in Jacksonville. It calls itself Jacksonville's home for gamers and nerds alike. It was a game tournament, Madden 19 NFL tournament, where basically you are on a computer, you're playing a video game, and you're competing against other people who are in that room, as well as potentially other people across the country. You have to be, as I said, 16 years old in order to do it. The prize today was $100 to $1,000, and then you get to go on, whatever the two winners are, they get to go on to the finals in this Madden 19 game situation. And we had that horrific, chilling videotape of someone who was playing the game at the time that the shots rang out, and we counted about 12 shots. Ed Davis, former Boston Police Commissioner, joins us now. Commissioner, from the fact that this target was a gaming site with potential teenagers and young people, what does that tell you, if anything, and that one suspect is dead?
Good afternoon. Well, I've responded to calls of active shooters, and I can tell you that it's chaotic when you first arrive at any kind of these scenes. And the fact that there are a lot of young people, a crowd, makes it even more chaotic. So you've got to believe that the very first reports that come out of the arrival here are confused. Oftentimes, even though there's only one shooter, there'll be reports of multiple shooters because multiple people hear and see things from their own perspective. So it takes some time to get this sorted out.
So when police are saying stay away from the area, they obviously are trying to see if there was another shooter potentially involved besides the one suspect who police are saying is dead.
Right. It's always good practice to rule out additional suspects before you declare an area safe. So there'll be a period of time, quite frankly, when the police would like to have complete control over the location and not only search for suspects, but also identify witnesses.
Yeah, I was going to ask Commissioner Davis, how important is it to speak to suspects as quickly as possible, given, of course, in the fury of everything, some of the details and what they were recalling, even instantaneously, will be quite frayed. However, I'd imagine the longer you wait to get eyewitness accounts, it'll be even more difficult to get accurate information as to what they saw.
Well, as time goes on and you speak to more people, you tend to develop a better picture of what's happening. And you wouldn't really want to question a suspect immediately. You'd want to wait until you got as much information as you could and then present the questions to the suspects when you've already know what the answers are.
Right.
So with the exception, of course, of spontaneous utterance, sometimes when someone is being arrested, they confess to something or they make statements against their interest, not as a result of questioning, but simply when they're confronted. So those are all very important. But right now, they're in the process of trying to round up all the witnesses. And as a secondary measure, first measure, of course, is to identify and neutralize any threat that may be in the area.
Right. And that's what I was asking, actually, in terms of speaking to those eyewitnesses, how important it is to get those accounts right away.
Oh, it's extremely important. You want to, the first officers on the scene are going to be asking people what they saw and where they heard the gunshots and where the suspect was last. They're going to be asking them questions about how many suspects there were, whether there were gunshots, multiple gunshots fired simultaneously. And, some of these cases are someone who wants to, a lone gunman who simply wants to kill someone. Other cases can be, incidents of multiple people shooting back and forth at each other in gang-related shootings. So we have to wait to see exactly what happened here. But with all of the people shot and the number of dead that are being reported, it looks like that this wasn't sort of a back and forth. It looks from the initial reports like someone was intent on hurting people.
So we don't know. So this is happening again at the Madden 19 tournament at the GLHF game bar. Do we know if this complex, if it's a complex that's enclosed? Do we know at all if there was a fight that broke out that turned into a gun battle? Do we know if someone had to enter an actual facility? Those are the types of questions that, of course, we don't have that information at the moment. Wondering if you have any of that you could try to fill us in with those details.
The only thing I can say is that there is a game bar located inside the facility. Mm-hmm. The facility, as you're showing on television, is a rather horseshoe-shaped entertainment facility. So there'll be a lot of people in there on a day like this, and it's hard to say exactly what's going on here and exactly where the shooting occurred until the police are able to secure the area and get some valid information out. But we do know that in situations like this, people sometimes plan this. They have some kind of a beef or decide that because there's so many people in that particular area, it's a good spot to find victims. We just have to wait and see.
We've had so many school shootings, tragically, and this nation's got to get a handle on the gun violence that we have. You have more people dead now, and this nation has to get a handle on the gun violence. Because here you apparently have some young people who clearly are victims of this. And Chief, judging by the fact that it was a game bar with an ongoing tournament, as you mentioned, it could be potentially a beef or an argument back and forth. But could it also be a targeted shooting? And we hear it right now.
Yes.
Could it be a targeted shooting that would go after young people, and it perhaps is a young person themselves, because we've seen so many suspects in these shootings are young males?
It could very well be disenfranchised youngsters who are isolated, like we saw in Parkland, who have a history, of psychological problems and treatment, but who are still out there. Those are exactly the type of things that are most likely in a situation like this. We do have to wait and see, but clearly there are young people being targeted here, and many times it's someone of the same, sort of cohort that does this type of attack.
And naturally, there will be surveillance cameras in the area, but also, according to local reports, local media they're reporting that the business was live streaming this tournament when the shots rang out, and some of this can be heard and seen as we showed on the video just momentarily. So again, how crucial will this be in terms of solving this issue, or at least getting some hardcore answers answered or supplied quite quickly?
Well, security cameras are so prevalent everywhere. In addition to that, people's first impulse when something like this happens is to pull out their own camera and start to record it. So that is extremely helpful as far as evidence in a situation. But it's also chilling to hear how it happens and the the reaction of people who get shot. It humanizes and brings to the public that sense of being in the middle of this, and I think that's the most difficult part of the evidence that we're presented. But I think it's really important that people understand exactly what's happening.
Chief, on Friday night there was a shooting, a triple shooting in Jacksonville, in which one man was killed and two teenagers were wounded in a triple shooting that occurred right after a football game. And the Jacksonville mayor blamed gang violence for that, and this happened just on Friday night. Could there be a nexus in that you have a gang situation on Friday night at the football game where some teenagers are shot, and then they know maybe that they're having a game and there's a beef ongoing. They're at this tournament, And that's the perfect setup to potentially have the shooting. We don't know what the facts are yet. We'll wait for the police briefing about that. But it seems curious that there was a gang-related shooting that did take a life on Friday night, and the Jacksonville mayor is blaming gang violence for that.
Right. I can tell you that that will be something that the officers look at and the detectives look at when they first arrive at the scene. They will look at what's been happening in the city, an incident like that, and rule that out or in as quickly as the facts will allow them. Of course, the unfortunate thing is, if you look at around the country, in cities all over, there are shootings like this almost every night. Even in Chicago, there's multiple shootings when we look at the records there. So,
the Chicago situation. It's carnage. That's a city that's under siege with carnage that is ongoing, uncontrolled, and has not been handled appropriately by Mayor Rahm Emanuel there. When we've had other cities be able to try to get a handle on this, such as New York City 20 years ago.
You know, Commissioner, if I can jump in just for a moment before you answer Eric's question there, because I want to ask you something more immediately as it pertains to Jacksonville. The average age of the youngsters attending this event, this video game event, they're 16 years old. So, of course, they have their phones usually. But what if there's a parent out there who knows that his or her child or children were at this event? What's the best advice to parents? Of course, the natural inclination is to run to the danger, to go and get your child. What do you say to parents?
Well, you know, the official response to something like that would be, please wait until the police clear the area and try to listen to official notifications before you go in there. But you know, that's a hollow piece of advice. I have a dear friend whose daughter was at the scene of the shooting in Las Vegas, and even though the police were saying to stay away, he rushed right to the scene. And I think that's pretty much the human kind of response to something like this.
Yeah, there was one shooter apparently on Friday night at the football game, in which a 19-year-old was killed, a 17 and 16-year-old were shot, and that shooter was not arrested. Is it possible that suspect could be this suspect who committed this crime and is shot dead? How do the police make that nexus, if there is any?
Well, they will have been working on the shooting at the football game since it happened. And it's been my experience that in a day or two, you have a very good sense of, if not enough to prove the case against someone, you have at least enough evidence to suspect that you understand exactly what the dynamics were behind the incident. So they'll be looking at this. It's hard to say. You know, you really. I guess my point about the shootings in other places was that these are becoming so frequent that it's not necessarily the same shooter. You know, in the 1970s, if someone was shooting somebody, it was the same guy, and you'd go out and try to find them as they went from one incident to another. Nowadays, it's become much more common, and there's not necessarily a link one to the other, especially where there's so many people hit with this. It doesn't seem very targeted. It almost seems like they were trying to get as many victims as they could.
And the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office tweeting, important, if you are hiding in the landing, call 911 so we can get to you. And they're using the hashtag the landing mass shooting, hashtag the landing mass shooting. So again, if there's anyone out there who would like to get immediate information aside from what we're going to be providing to you, of course, is up to the minute details as soon as we get them. You can also use the hashtag the landing mass shooting to also follow this story as it develops. And again, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office tweeting, we are finding many people hiding in locked areas in the landing. We ask you to stay calm, stay where you are hiding. SWAT is doing a methodical search inside the landing. We will get to you. Please don't come running out. Again, that hashtag, the landing mass shooting. And Commissioner Davis, we thank you for joining us. Keep it right here on the Fox News Channel as we will continue to cover this breaking story of shooting at a game tournament in Jacksonville, Florida.